In today's video, we're going to be discussing all the latest NHL news and rumors. In the past 24 to 48 hours, we've had a lot of things happen that have kind of stirred up a lot of speculation. For starters, yesterday, as we discussed here, we had Steve Yzerman resign as GM of the Tampa Bay Lightning, so there's a lot of speculation and rumors on his future. We had the Ottawa Senators release a really weird video featuring owner Eugene Melnyk, which has stirred up a lot of more rumors around that franchise. Plus, we still have some really key RFAs unsigned as training camps be prepared to open up tomorrow. We'll discuss all those topics coming up next. Hey everyone, and welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. If you're new to the channel, thanks for stopping by. We review and discuss all 31 NHL teams, so if you're a huge hockey fan, consider subscribing and clicking the bell so you don't miss anything. So as I mentioned off the top, we've had a lot of things happen here in the past day or two to kind of stir up a lot of rumors and speculation around various topics around the NHL. So first of all, I want to jump in and get started here with some key RFA players that are still unsigned as training camps mostly prepare to open up here in the next day or so. We have three key defensemen on that list, including Darnell Nurse of the Oilers, Shea Theodore of the Vegas Golden Knights, Josh Morrissey of the Winnipeg Jets. We also have a couple of key forwards as well, including Sam Reinhart of the Buffalo Sabres and William Nylander of the Toronto Maple Leafs. At this point in time, I've researched all these players to find out what I could on the status of their contract negotiations, and at this point in time, it looks as though none of them appear to be close or imminent to signing a new deal with their existing teams. Not only are some of these players not close to signing, in some cases they appear to be quite a ways apart as far as negotiations go. I mean, I've seen reports on defenseman Darnell Nurse as well as Shea Theodore of the Vegas Golden Knights, and both indicate that neither one of them appear to be close. They seem to be a major gap in between the team and the player request, so it's hard to say when we're going to come to resolution here. So we very well could have some of these players miss the beginning of training camp, which is not going to be good for the team or the player, but unfortunately these situations do arise at times. I did see one comment from the Buffalo Sabres regarding their negotiations with forward Sam Reinhart. Jason Botterill, all he really said was that they're looking to have a fair contract for the team and the player. So that tells me that more than likely they're trying to do a bridge deal. Obviously, Reinhart could be looking for longer term. And like I mentioned before in some other videos, we had some other contract signings this offseason that they're likely using as comparables in the Reinhart camp that kind of put up his value. It might be higher than what Buffalo originally had in mind here. I did see one report yesterday on William Nylander of the Toronto Maple Leafs indicating he was still over in Sweden and they weren't sure when he was coming over to be with his teammates in Toronto here to open training camp. So obviously that's a little bit concerning, but in all these players' cases, it's certainly understandable and quite common if you don't have a contract to not end up reporting to training camp. So unfortunately, it looks as though none of these players will be at training camp, at least on the first day to open up camp here with the rest of their teammates. Hopefully we can get some resolution to some of these guys soon. It is quite possible as well as some of these players' contract negotiations continue on. The longer it drags on, you're likely going to start to hear trade rumors around some of these guys. And it is quite possible teams may look to trade the player if they just have an impossible time coming to terms here on a new contract. Although I do think the preference would be for all of these clubs to keep these players and get them under contract as soon as possible. Now let's jump over here and talk about the Steve Yzerman situation in Tampa. Now I did have a video out yesterday, obviously when the announcement first broke that he was stepping down, but of course that was prior to the Tampa Bay press conference between Yzerman, Brisebois, as well as ownership discussing the situation. So we didn't really gain a whole lot more details during that press conference, but when Yzerman was asked a lot of questions about his future, he certainly was very non-committal to what he was going to be doing beyond this year. He has 1 year left on his contract with the Lightning organization, and that's all he would say is he's going to fulfill that as an advisor. And beyond that, he really didn't know. Obviously, Julien Brisebois at one point kind of spoke up and said he'd love to have Yzerman stay with the organization longer term, but that they would sit down and discuss that at the end of the year, see how Yzerman was enjoying the new role, and if it would work for him moving forward. Based on all the responses and everything that we've seen during that press conference, I do think there's a really high likelihood that Yzerman leaves the Lightning organization at the end of the year and possibly joins another organization or goes in a new direction next summer. What that could entail is really hard to say at this point in time. Could he rejoin the Detroit Red Wings? It certainly is possible. Obviously, they did re-sign General Manager Ken Holland to a 2-year extension this past summer, so he'd have 1 year left as we head into next summer. But could Ken Holland possibly do the same thing that Yzerman is doing, maybe move into an advisory type of role and let Yzerman take over for the final year? of his contract. Certainly wouldn't be out of the realm of possibilities here. We see that type of thing all the time. Obviously, as guys are ready to move on. Obviously, there's the new Seattle team will likely be official by then, so they're going to be looking for a general manager, and guys like Ken Holland or Steve Yzerman are certainly strong candidates that could potentially move over to that franchise as well. So there's certainly lots of speculation around Yzerman in his future, but at this point in time, I do think the odds are pretty good he will leave the Lightning organization. But obviously, it's way too early to really speculate for sure on where he will go and what his future will hold for him. Now, jumping over to take a look at the latest trade rumors, a lot came out after the Ottawa Senators put out a video the other night, which came out around 10 o'clock Eastern time, which was really a bizarre time for them to release a video through their social media channels featuring owner Eugene Melnyk basically being interviewed by defenseman Mark Borowiecki. I thought it was really weird. It was an odd timing, but then again, the way the Senators have been here in the past little while, it's not shocking for them to kind of try to slip this out through the media here late on a Monday evening. Odd timing for sure, but that's the kind of the way this organization rolls lately, is they like to slip things in when you kind of least expect it here. It was certainly a really weird conversation between owner Eugene Melnyk and Mark Borowiecki. If you haven't seen the video, I'll try to put a link to it in the description down below so you can check it out. I don't know if Mark Borowiecki lost a bet or something with his teammates or how he ended up being selected as the guy in the video here with Eugene Melnyk. Personally, if they really want to send a strong message to the fans and to the community, no offense to Borowiecki, but they could have used a bigger name to answer the hard questions. They made sure they used the word rebuild many times, especially from like the halfway point on through the video. Basically, it was Mark Borowiecki asking questions to the owner, and he was basically committing that they're going to have more resources to develop a strong leadership group within the team, and that they have a lot of young prospects that are ready to make that jump to the NHL. And all that is all true. The Senators do have a really solid prospect pool, and they do have some guys looking to make that jump this year. Owner Eugene Melnyk did indicate in this video that he expected up to 10 new faces in the lineup this year, meaning guys that are either brand new to the NHL or guys who only had a small sample of games last season. So that wasn't overly surprising, but he said within the next year or so, you're probably going to see that roster change from about 15 to 16 new players by next season. So basically indicating that they are going to be doing a full roster rebuild, like a full teardown here, if you will. So that's certainly fueled a lot more trade speculation around some of their top guys who have been in the mix already for trades, like Captain Erik Karlsson. Obviously, at this point in time, Karlsson would be entering the final year of his contract, and we keep hearing from time to time that trade talks are heating up. I did see a report within the last 48 hours as well saying that trade talks have intensified as training camps prepare to open, and that perhaps the Senators will like to see this done before camp opens. But then I see another report from Nick Kyprios of Sportsnet indicating that the best offer on the table for the Senators captain was from the Dallas Stars, but it wasn't very attractive and he didn't expect anything to come from it. At this point in time, it looks like teams are very hesitant to come anywhere close to the asking price that the Senators are asking for Karlsson. So could he stay with the franchise through the start of the year? Certainly seems like a good possibility. He was seen skating at an informal skate with a lot of his teammates the other day as well. So, you know, obviously at this point in time, it looks as though a trade front on Erik Karlsson is not imminent. However, a lot of the usual suspects are still reportedly in play, but with some of these other teams making other changes here in the past couple days, could it change the dynamic of what teams are interested? Obviously, the Vegas Golden Knights were a team in a hot pursuit of Erik Karlsson from the deadline on into the early part of this offseason, but they obviously went out and acquired left winger Max Pacioretty from Montreal and then signed him to a 4-year, $7 million extension. Obviously, that's going to take a bite out of their salary cap situation, so they don't have quite as much room as they do before, but I don't think you can completely rule out Vegas out of the Karlsson sweepstakes, assuming that he does end up getting traded here. Obviously, they do have some other assets that are still attractive. After parting with forward Nick Suzuki, who's a top prospect for the organization, I'm not sure they'd want to part with too many other top prospects, but they do have some really solid defensive prospects like Erik Brandstrom, like Nicholas Hag. They also have youngster Cody Glass, which they seem to be really high on as well. So obviously, they do have some prospects that would be attractive to Ottawa for sure. They have plenty of draft picks, and they do have some pieces on their roster that they likely would be willing to part with should it land in the all-star defenseman. But depending on what Karlsson would want for an extension, it is possible that Vegas would have to, try to move around some money off the books here. They do have some space available still, but they do have Shea Theodore unsigned, as we discussed earlier, and he is going to be getting a decent raise once that contract is finally negotiated. Now, Theodore could be a player involved in the trade going back to Ottawa should that deal actually take place. But either way, I wouldn't rule out the Vegas Golden Knights in this situation for sure. I know the Dallas Stars still seem to be quite interested as well. And of course, with Steve Yzerman now being out of the GM role and Julien BriseBois being at the head of the table here for the Lightning, would they still be as interested in Karlsson as they appeared to be before? I know Yzerman and BriseBois work quite closely. They obviously would have a lot of the same opinions. Maybe BriseBois wouldn't feel that deal was so important for the team like Yzerman did, and maybe that might take the Lightning out of the equation. It's hard to say. Obviously, with BriseBois just being on the job here since yesterday, we really don't know a lot of his opinions, but I do know he worked behind the scenes and certainly should get a lot more credit than he did previously, as he was a vital role and asset to Steve Yzerman and their staff and having so much success there in Tampa Bay. Other reports I've seen indicate that the Ottawa Senators would really like to lock up Mark Stone and Matt Duchene and have them be part of the solution moving forward and have them be the veteran guys that they kind of build around here. Obviously, time will tell if they want to be a part of that, but if they are not signed as we approach closer to the NHL trade deadline this season, you're certainly going to see the speculation and rumors accelerate around those guys, and they certainly would fetch a decent return for the Senators, but they do need to have some veteran guys, obviously, to build around here moving forward, and they certainly would be key players that are still young enough and strong enough players to do that with. Obviously, with the Ottawa Senators putting up this video from Eugene Melnyk here, obviously, it's safe to say you're going to see a lot of movement and a lot of turnover in that roster, more so than we already have in Ottawa. So obviously at this point in time, the question remains is what veterans will they build around and which guys are going to be shipped out to other teams. So as NHL teams prepare to open training camps here over the next 24 hours, obviously we're likely going to see an uptick in action and speculation around a lot of teams and players. Obviously, there's still a lot of unsettled and unfinished business between contracts needing to be done or players that likely will be traded but haven't been done so as of yet here. So after a little bit of a slower news period, I would imagine here in the coming days, things are certainly going to heat up here as training camps begin to open. Now, if you're new to the channel here, I hope you consider subscribing. We cover all 31 NHL teams, and there's plenty of content here for all hockey fans to enjoy. So if you're new, hit that subscribe button. If you like this video, don't forget to hit the like button as well. I'd appreciate it if you did. As always, thank you very much for watching, everybody. We will catch you next time.